Censorship never stops at what you personally find depraved. It's easy to cheer when it targets people you can't stand, but once you normalize and silence others, it eventually shows up at your door. So, answer this question honestly. Would you be okay if your morality wasn't the one enforced? Lock it in, because in the next few minutes, I'll show you how moral panic, corporate brand risk, and protect the kids framing are quietly shrinking what you're allowed to say, make, and even buy. We are on a fast decline to censorship, and that should be evident by the time you finish this video. But first, why should you care about censorship? Especially so if it's something that is objectionable. Some of you may be thinking that, but I think the answer to that is explained simply this way. Censorship is never about what you hate, it's about what comes next. You don't have to defend the content being censored, it's just the principle that you have to defend. Many things being censored may be objectionable to the masses or even just a select group. Either way, it doesn't matter. Freedom of speech and expression is not about protecting the popular. It's about protecting the unwanted, the disturbing, the weird, the uncomfortable. There is always something you will like and that others will detest. But if you don't stand up for the freedom of others, don't expect anyone to stand up for yours. And don't be mistaken, you will need others to stand up for your media or speech because it will be targeted. Yes, that media that you may not think is problematic or offensive is likely to be the subject of an escalating crackdown on free expression. Everything from media just depicting minority groups, such as the LGBT community, to more adult content has been subject to ire by those pushing censorship. Those who are censor happy come in all creeds and political parties. It's not a left-wing or right-wing issue, as we'll discuss later. It's an authoritarian tool, one which can be wielded by any group willing to use it in order to exercise power, justifying its usage through outrage and faulty moral arguments. But outrage alone can't censor at scale unless there's an infrastructure to do so. Until recently, many haven't noticed how many money pipes and platforms have begun enforcing morality. Payment processors, storefronts, social media, hosting providers, all of them are using their services in a way that punishes controversial expression. And the way they get away with it is using their policies' ambiguous language. This allows them to get away with their censorship and deplatforming both legally and logistically. Nearly all of them contain some variant of the magic phrase brand risk and sole discretion in their terms of service. By using just two phrases as justification to kick you off their platform, they can strip you of your livelihood overnight without any recourse. There is no democratic debate nor protection from this happening to you. It's a chokehold which can damage you financially and restrict your reach at a moment's notice. Mind you, it's not like you can vote for the people running these platforms. For all intents and purposes, they are unaccountable to the average person watching this video. Instead, they only answer to shareholders and loud organizations that threaten them into complying, lest they risk their brand reputation. These shareholders and organizations want their morality instilled into companies and will pressure them as much as they can to see it happen. Again, we've seen this to be the case. Not too long ago, a radical feminist organization known as Collective Shout was able to accomplish their aims through pressure tactics on corporations. They successfully pushed Steam, Visa, MasterCard recently to comply with takedowns of material they deemed offensive. Additionally, a major anti-porn organization known as Exodus Cry was responsible for the Trafficking Hub campaign, which was also on the forefront of censorship. They are just two of the key figures pushing companies and legislators to impose stricter regulations on the internet. Both these and many other censor-happy activists rely on a single narrative to push for these takedowns, one which almost feels impossible to argue with. We need to protect the children. This is the line that activists and governments use as the emotional justification for their censorship. It's the oldest and most persuasive trick in the censorship playbook. I mean, who doesn't want to protect kids, right? But framing censorship as protecting children implies something deeply misleading. It implies that broad, restrictive laws and purges are the only way to keep sensitive material away from kids, conveniently ignoring the many tools that already exist. Parental controls, content filters, account restrictions, device profiles, age gating, all of these currently allow guardians precise control over what their kids can access. They aren't secret and they aren't hard to use, they're just underused. Yet despite real solutions being present, advocates push a simpler, scarier narrative. Either we censor the internet and make content hard to access for everyone, or kids will inevitably be harmed. This sets a dangerous precedent. It makes everyone responsible for every child's online safety instead of empowering parents and guardians directly. I'm gonna be real blunt when I say this, but it needs to be said. The state should never act as a digital nanny. The government shouldn't restrict adults simply because children exist. If we continue down this path and buy into this narrative, the digital world will become sanitized and sterilized. Adults will lose access to art, media, and conversations, all to make the internet acceptable for children's eyes. Frankly, we need to separate real child safety measures from mass censorship campaigns. True safety doesn't mean shielding everyone from everything that's upsetting. It means equipping parents with the tools, education, and responsibility to handle it. Because when fear and panic take control of the public, then rational solutions rarely get considered. Instead, the solution becomes fixing the internet, stripping away content, losing nuance, and narrowing the scope of acceptable expression. To put it simply, the solution requires treating every adult like a child. It's not about child safety, it's about control. And speaking of children, here's the curveball here, right? The new moral police are not just parents and boomers. A chunk of my generation raised on edgy memes and internet freedom now treats problematic as should not exist.
This is such a good breakdown of not only a lot of fandom discourse, but a lot of discourse about fiction in general. I'm so tired of these new gens coming in with the mindset of being uncomfortable equals harm equals problematic. And I think another thing that often gets tied into this and just like exacerbates the whole fucking situation is morality. Because people equate discomfort or even just disliking something with immorality. Because people will see something that makes them uncomfortable and go, this makes me uncomfortable, therefore it must be harmful, it must be problematic, it must be immoral.
Instead of muting, blocking, or debating content that's disapproved of, many of my generation demand removal and censorship. What worries me most is how many are quietly accepting this as a normal response to offensive media. This shouldn't be the case, especially so given what we know is happening and who they're unwittingly handing control over to when they demand censorship. To any of my fellow Gen Z among the audience, let me remind you of something fundamental. You don't need to support the content to support the right for it to exist. Censorship is just not selective. It doesn't carefully avoid what you cherish, it relentlessly expands into all corners. Moral panics about content which depict themes, ideas, and material which you find objectionable doesn't just end there. It may start with that type of content, but it ends with your art, your voice, and your weird niche. Today's acceptable can very easily become tomorrow's target. That's exactly why outsourcing your morality is a bad idea. Letting social media outrage and mobs dictate cultural standards is just so dangerous. It emboldens the masses and by proxy, corporations and governments to enforce their morality onto everyone. These two groups are more than happy to capitalize on the youth's moral panic for their own benefit, and they will come at it from both ends of the political spectrum, because it's not about the left wing nor the right wing being solely responsible, it's everyone versus those with power. Both sides of the political aisle have their for your own good wish list, just aimed at different enemies. For the left, they want content deemed problematic that promotes offensive or harmful themes to be censored and deplatformed. For the right, they want material deemed degenerate or against traditional values to be censored and banned. All across the spectrum of political and cultural beliefs, you'll find someone who wants their side's morality instilled upon everyone else. But once censorship is culturally normal, nobody controls it. The Overton window is constantly moving. Yesterday's righteous ban becomes today's cautionary tale. If you're someone who hesitates to defend the right for objectionable content to exist, ask yourself this question. If you got this power to ban content you don't like, are you okay when your worst enemy inherits it next? We shouldn't be comfortable handing our freedoms to a government influenced by hostile organizations, lobbyists, and companies. You can hate and detest each other's beliefs and what they consume all you want, but if we don't align on defending freedom first and foremost, then we're all screwed. So the moment you argue this content should be banned because of X, Y, or Z reason, please know you're surrendering control of what you can consume to people who actually hold power. And one of the ways in which they're currently making this possible through the erosion of privacy and anonymity. People often shrug their shoulders when the subject of privacy comes up. They'll say things like, who cares if Google has my data, or privacy is dead anyways. Problem is, privacy isn't dead, it's dying, and that difference matters. A dying right can be saved while a dead one can't be. When was the last time you thought about your digital footprint? Most people shrug this off as an unimportant thing that doesn't concern them. Why bother caring? Companies know everything about me anyways. This isn't true, but even if it was, it's because we allow it to be that way. Privacy isn't a magic switch where you flip on the OPSEC button and suddenly you're untraceable. It's a sliding scale you adjust by building a threat model, deciding which data you care about and who you want to keep it from. Yet despite privacy tools being more prevalent than ever, many people, especially in my generation, have chosen indifference. They see handing over all your data and identification to sites as an inevitable fate. But here's the key problem with this belief. Defeatism of this nature is not only dangerous, but also wildly inaccurate. Think about it. If the government truly knew everything, why do massive dark web drug markets keep popping up? Why do child exploitation rings tragically persist for years before arrests? The reason is rather simple. Even with today's surveillance tech, there are hurdles that limit data collection and raise the cost of targeting individuals. Many still wonder though, what's the big deal? What could they even use that data for? Let me tell you. Does Cambridge Analytica ring a bell? Content designed to sway the public through curated posts and advertisements built for them personally. Mind you, this was before the rise of modern artificial intelligence, which will and has made this issue far worse. Recently, researchers have used AI to sway opinions on platforms like Reddit, using their posts, their personal details shared, and other inferences to manipulate them in a particular direction of belief. Think about it. Do you really want these actors having all of your data and your identity disclosed to them? Even assuming the people harvesting your data are not bad actors. Data breaches happen to companies of all sizes every single day. There are many social media platforms and legislation proposals centered over requiring ID verification of users. It's a valid concern to have that your data will end up in the wrong hands. And this is why people waving off privacy concerns drive me insane. By believing everyone is tracked anyways, you have already chosen to lose the battle. And anyone who does value privacy and tries to fight back is treated with suspicion. If you have nothing to hide, why are you concerned? Put simply, the slow normalization of a surveillance state starts with defeatist minds and ends with all of us getting damaged. This includes those who did care being punished, all in the name of protecting children and propped up by the apathy and defeatism of those who give up their privacy. It's honestly a very sad and bleak future ahead of us, but we continue to look away as privacy, anonymity, and freedom of expression quickly erodes from the internet. It is long since being about just the content being harmful or a threat to children. It has evidently become about control. If there's one idea to take away from this whole video, it's that censorship never stops where you want it to. It doesn't freeze at your comfort line, it just continues to creep. And eventually, it catches up to you. You don't have to defend the content, you just have to defend the principle. You can call it weird, offensive, hate it all you want. Hell, being a hater is fun sometimes. But protect its right to exist, and that's really all you have to do. Protecting expression means protecting the unwanted, the disturbing, the weird, because tomorrow what you like could easily become the unwanted. Censorship is never about what you hate, it's about what comes next. The fight is about defending your rights, not your wants. And if you actually want to start fighting back against this fast wave of censorship, the wave that is, mind you, happening in many different countries, including the United States, where they're passing legislation in Missouri, and over in the UK, they're trying to push VPN bans. This will be an uphill battle, but it's not impossible to fight back. I've included a Google document with various actionable steps you can take today. This includes a handy infographic you can use when calling Visa and MasterCard, the two payment processors responsible for a lot of content removal. That being said, I hope you do take action and vocalize your stand against this hellscape we could be heading towards. Please let me know what you think about this issue and what you're doing to push back in the comments below. I read almost every single one and love the discussions around this topic, as it's honestly a very important issue to me. Anyways, be sure to subscribe, as I'll have another video on this topic and how deep the corporation activists have gone to enforce their morality coming real soon. Thank you guys so much for watching, and peace out.